breaking earth up into her parts is a very disgusting habit that we do.
Well, as long as we're doing it, though. I tell you that the chaga, is good stuff. But in certain ways, I think that chaga ain't got nothing on this Birch Polypore. The Birch Polypore is just dominating right now, Jim. It's come on the scene strong. No one was expecting it. It was a complete sleeper, came out of nowhere, and now it's totally dominating and infecting and accelerating its way into not only our habitat, but into our minds. They are infecting their ways into our psychology and into our psyche. Check this out for yourself and notice if it's not true in your own direct experience. The people who are into mushrooms in your circle, they're on a whole different level. They're connected, they're interested, they're curious, and they're possibly being controlled by a force beyond their conception.
This transmission is coming to you from deep in the jungles of central Maine. You are about to get high on spirit.
Ball's rolling in. Time to get what roots you can. Pick what mushrooms are still left out there. It's one of the biggest mushroom years I've ever seen.
There have been a massive amount of mushrooms up here in the Northeast and all over, really, because I've been hearing reports of the same mushrooms we found up here being found as far down south as Louisiana, and it's been a plentitude, multitude harvest, and we've been out quite a bit this season.
Yeah, I've been eating pounds and pounds of mushrooms on the daily.
We found oyster, shelf oyster, we found the shrimp of the woods.
Lots of mazutakis.
Matsutakis, oh yeah.
Maitakis.
Amanita muscarias.
Oh, yeah?
And then the one we want to talk about today on this episode is the Birch Polypore. And the Birch Polypore mushroom is a shelf mushroom. It's been used medicinally for thousands of years, we know about. And we wanted to go out into the woods and see if we could find some here locally and harvest it before it gets too cold and before, we're done for the season. So we've had some nice weather.
Yeah, let's see if we can hunt the not-so-elusive Birch Polypore.
Gorgeous up here in the hills of Maine. Today is going to be a special segment as we're going deep into the woods in search of the famed Birch Polypore mushroom. This mushroom has been likened to the new chaga, right? Now, why is that?
Because people haven't talked about it yet, I guess. Because all the polypores are just so incredibly medicinally active. Bring about the health that's existing inside the forest. They form a symbiotic relationship with the trees and are able to help the trees when they're sick, and in turn the trees give them all the vitality, all the monoatomic elements, all the nurturing of that wild ecosystem, and then when we consume it we become a little bit closer to our natural selves.
Well, the Birch Polypore is unique in that it is considered a parasite to these birch trees, and so it's actually in some sort of relationship with it, but it feeds off the living trees and will actually suck the life out of them over time. So we don't feel bad about going in and harvesting as many of these as we can. But the cool thing about it is the medicinal properties of this particular one are vast and wide, and so can be applied to many different things, and we'll be getting into them as we go. But let's get into it. We got a whole lot of birch here in this forest. Let's go see what we can find.
Oh, but I see some on the ground here. Not a Birch Polypore, but something unique, interesting here.
Oh, looks kind of like a psilocybin mushroom.
It could be. Just to make sure that we harvest this in all legal respects, we'll offer a little tobacco, and then if you never touch it with your hands, you never touched it.
Huh, okay. All right. I was not aware of those stipulations. But okay. So let me see if I can down here. Not as easy as you think. Nonetheless. Yeah. Tasty. I think that will help in our hunt.
Yeah. Little tobacco offering there for the spirits of the land.
Looks like there's one left for the cameraman.
Yeah, I was bringing it up because I was digging into the constituents that are inside the Birch Polypore. Not that I can really find a whole lot of literature on the totality of what's in there, but there's been some isolations, and they've gone over some of it in a few studies. One of the things that came out was there's a bunch of sterols that are precursors to basically like a testosterone type of compound, but a steroid. Things that like give a big jump to the whole system.
Okay.
And one that's in there in the most, it's in a lot of fungus, it's called Ergosterol, because it's named after ergot.
Ergot, yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
And it fulfills a function in the fungal world that cholesterol would fulfill in the animal world as a precursor to testosterone, as a precursor to the impetus of the movement.
So what's the relationship between the sterol, I'm guessing, is the steroidal aspect of it? What's the ergot component in relation to this compound in the Birch Polypore? And you say in a lot of mushrooms it's found, yeah?
Yeah, they named it after it because that's the first place they found it.
Okay.
It's similar to serotonin, like they didn't understand the function of neurotransmitters or that they existed until they were looking into these ergot compounds. So there's some things in the sterols. There's a bunch of these indoles, and indoles are when Gaia generated indoles. At that point, there was this new level of consciousness that was possible, and this new level of aerobic respiration being possible in bacteria, and we as mammals, as animals, are a compilation of aerobic and anaerobic bacteria, but our aerobic bacteria, our oxygen-breathing bacteria, is the stuff that gives us life, is the stuff that we want, where the anaerobic bacteria is where we get sick.
It's the decay and all that.
Yeah, it smells bad, doesn't smell good, yeah. And so when we started making indoles, they were the most antioxidant compounds that nature's made so far. Like serotonin is one of the most antioxidant compounds. So when
DMT is one.
Yeah, but it hasn't been studied yet. This is when it's going to get interesting, I think, in terms of when they start looking at how other medicinal effects of what DMT is doing in the ecosystem. Because it's really prevalent, and it doesn't have a psychological effect unless the other enzymes are there to help it work, because it's broken down in the gut, so unless you have the wherewithal to let it absorb sublingually or topically, it's not going to have the juiciness that it would have otherwise. But there's definitely a lot of health benefit that's going to be going on there.
Well, it's interesting with the Birch Polypore, too, because we found that with certain combinations, adding Birch Polypore to other medicinal mushrooms, let's say, activated it. Whereas before it would take hours for it to kind of like work its way into your system. And this way was instantaneous.
Yeah, so there's this one constituent that's been found in some of the studies. I mean, all the studies that I know that's looked for, but I think there's probably other stuff, is why I say it like that. But it's called 5-methyltryptamine. And it shows up in nothing else in the plant world that I can find. Like there's a lot of 5-methoxymethyltryptamines and 5-methoxy-A-methyltryptamines, like MMT is really pervasive in the acacias and the varrolas and in the grasses that come in when there's a disturbance in the ecosystem. These methylated tryptamines occur for a variety of reasons. But this 5-methyltryptamine, as far as I can find at this point, which is limited by what's available to us online, it's the only place that it's occurring.
Is in this Birch Polypore.
Documented is in the Birch Polypore.
Wow.
But it's also, so
it's known to contain indoles, and 5-methyltryptamine is one of them. Are there other?
There are other indoles. Let's stick on the 5-methyl one for a minute, because it's curious to me how every time I keep punching it in, it would try to send me to a different indole. It would try to send me to this AMT, which is a synthetic one that's getting a lot of interest, or a 5-methoxy NMT. Very little stuff. There's a couple of stuff on this government site. It's already patented, this compound, by a pharmaceutical company, because they've shown that it has neurogenic capabilities. They want to market it for Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and as a neurotropic. So it seems, for whatever reason, there isn't literature that's being done on its bioactivity, on what actually it does in terms of neurogenic action, and that may have to do with the patent, or it may just have to do with the interest hasn't gone there yet.
You know, it's surprising too, because this mushroom dates back thousands of years in its use, and we know this, because, for instance, the Iceman, one of the guys that they dug out of the ice fully intact, was found to have this mushroom in his purse, in his pouch, in his container. And, a couple of interesting little tidbits of how that relates to its medicinal use, because it was also used as tinder, as a fire carrier, right? It has that capacity as well.
They'd have the tinder polypore. It's a different mushroom, and then a little bit of that birch polypore when it's dried out to keep the coal going. And then what would that be if you had a little coal there inside a little bowl, and you're blowing on it and you're getting it going. The other plant that he had with him was cannabis. So in journeying into this, the interworld is proposing the possibility that the Iceman was the first documented human stoner.
I was going to say medicine man. But,
he was a fire carrier. We know this. We know he was a medicine man. He had the acupuncture points tattooed on his back that were in correlation to the spinal degeneration that was going on in relationship to the spirochetic bacteria that he had in him. They were similar to like a Lyme that would affect people today. And the Birch Polypore would be a medicine for that physically.
That's what I had also read about the certain parasite that he was carrying, in his intestines, that it could have been, definitely would have been used to treat. And it's powerful at treating today for ourselves. I remember, I went to a doctor and even went to the hospital one time because I was experiencing some gut issues, and I was pretty convinced that there was some sort of imbalance in the gut flora and or possibly a parasite of some nature, and I was unable to get anywhere as far as them treating that in that way. They wanted to go the traditional route of just like gastrointestinal kind of stuff, and luckily I was able to heal that. But had I known about this back then, I think this would have been a fantastic way to really accelerate the healing and be able to take it, into my own hands, because we know about its antiviral properties, we know about its antifungal, but it's also anti-parasitic, and
and it's getting a lot of activity in calming nervous people. And I think this nervousness has to do with an imbalance in the stomach flora and an imbalance with nature. And both of those things seem to be like soothed into a relationship.
I'll tell you what, the first time I ever tried the Birch Polypore tea, I experienced something that was pretty interesting, and it was palpable and immediate, right? I drank the tea. After, half of the cup or what have you, I felt this shift in my energy in my gut, and I felt this intense amplification of my energy. It felt like it just increased tremendously from nowhere, but it wasn't like coming from the ground, like earth energy coming up. It was just coming somehow from within. And my intuition was saying, these entities or whatever that are sapping your energy, they're all getting massacred right now by this tea, by the constituents that are in this tea. And in that slaughter, their energy is being released back into your system, and that's what you're experiencing right now.
Yeah, yeah, so a little clay.
I don't know if that's possible.
Well,
that is what I experienced palpably.
They call it the Herkimer reaction, named after some white doctor guy, that documented the effects that what we experience as inflammation. A lot of these negative effects in relationship to bacteria is the endotoxin. It's the dead bacteria. And if you can flush that out of there with some clay, some charcoal, it'll suck it up, and you won't have nearly as many.
Yeah, but is that possible, though, that they were, well, of course it could be possible.
It's totally possible.
They're just transmuting energy like an alchemist, right? And that's what we work with a lot, is alchemizing our energies. And where I was wasting it and giving it over, almost betraying myself in my compliance in in this relationship with these entities, let's say, and so bringing things back into balance and restoring wholeness, and energy returns to the system and homeostasis.
Yeah.
All because of a mushroom that you can find in your woods.
Yeah, and the whole thing about it being parasitic, it's possible, but I spent some time thinking about this, and I'm not saying that it's not parasitic on birch trees, but the way that it's put is that it's parasitic on birch trees that are sick. It's not like it's eating all the birch trees. Like, we know it's been here for thousands and thousands of years. So it may be possible that these birch trees are sick because of viruses, because of an anaerobic bacteria.
For sure, and this is, I wanted to talk about this too, because as you know, for instance, even the cordyceps mushrooms that form a relationship with the ants, where they basically turn them into zombies and, make them climb the highest point and release their spores. But they don't infect every ant. They don't infect the whole colony. They don't want to destroy their very habitat. They just want to expand in a way that's harmonious and natural. And in the same way, I think these birch polypores are intelligent and would know some kind of how, through their perceptive capacity, that they don't want to destroy their host and overrun everything. They just want to bring balance. So that would make sense that they were only working with the sick trees and things like that. You walk through the forest, as we were walking through yesterday, and you find them here and there, but they have the capacity to go wherever and just spread and just completely eradicate and decimate the birch colony.
But that's never been, you never see that.
But they don't.
Yeah. And they do show up year after year, so that in picking some, you're not picking the mushroom body's inside the tree. So encouraging more harvesting, to some degree, is encouraging more fruiting of the mushroom. Yeah, this 5-methylated tryptamine and its oral activity really hasn't been looked at, but you've noticed some very synergistic effects with the amanitas.
Yes, in fact, we wanted to do an episode on that whole experience and how to prepare it and everything too. But yes, with that, and then again, just on its own, it definitely, with the amanitas, had a synergistic immediate effect. And I sampled it both ways several times.
I noticed just sucking on some of the fresh flesh of the birch polypore had a really interesting expanding, grounding, noticeable reaction.
I would say grounding for sure. And it would make sense because we've been exploring a lot of the aspects of, the first level of evolution, we could say, where we're really connecting with the earth and with our innate relationship and capacity for survival and security. And so connection with these plants and fungi
Yeah, it's interesting that your hands go up like that, because I find all the shelf mushrooms to be one that sort of teaches that activity there, the iron shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. In visualizing yourself as being the mushroom mycelium, as one does this practice, feeling the host defense of the mycelial and how it strengthens your auric immunity and changes the perception of what is holding up our form from our muscles into this interwoven structure that's larger than the muscles or the bones or the water
the tendons
system
or anything. Yes, I like that, the interwoven interconnectedness. As they say, you know what? How many million nadis?
We've been running for days, trudging through the woods. These mushrooms.
Well, we've been going at it for a little while. We've covered some distance. But, you know, and that's the thing about any time you're out here in the woods foraging, or like if you're fishing or you're doing something that requires patience, discipline, persistence, there comes that point in the hunt when oftentimes you must push through the resistance and the fear of what if we don't find anything? What if we don't catch anything? What if it doesn't happen? You know what I'm saying? I felt that initially like a little while ago. And I felt it coming on. I was like, no, that's just that feeling. It always happens. But persistence pays. And I followed my spidey senses, right? And we went over this way, found a whole swath of birch, and sure enough, come look at this. Check it out. Yeah, spotted some. It's so easy to spot from a while away. You can note how it just pops right off the side here of these birch. You can just pick them like you're picking corn. And look, this thing is loaded. It's got some giant ones up there. I'm gonna have to climb up and get them.
And then whether the methylated tryptamine that's in there acts as a beta carboline or not.
What would that?
That would be an explanation of why, a partial explanation, why other compounds would be activated by it. Okay. It's been shown that like the 5-methoxy dimethyltryptamine can act as a beta carboline, or at least it can be orally active, so it's possible that some of the other ones could too as well.
You can take it down.
Yeah, something like that. Well, we don't really have the equipment to do that today, I don't think. We can get up there.
Gymnastics.
Right up this thing.
Yeah, do the little monkey dance up the other tree.
Yeah, maybe I'll just climb right up here. If you can give me a boost, I think.
And it is a full synergistic effect is far closer to an activity. Like the mushroom itself is a cocktail of nature. Like there's all this finely discussion of like that it is about like the cocktail when treating a complex anaerobic organism or virus, treating it in a similar way to how nature would treat these things, that it's coming at it from multiple angles. And that's what the plants and the mushrooms have been figuring out for a long, long time. It's why it doesn't work when we isolate one particular antibiotic and then we hear that, oh, they're making biofilms so that the antibiotics don't work. Well, that can only work with antibiotics. All of the plant medicines and the Birch Polypore is going to break down and inhibit the form of the biofilms. They've recently been doing some studies, like 2011 or so, on apoptosis in relationship to constituents in Birch Polypore. Apoptosis is like we don't have really an understanding what does it kill the cancer cell? Does it choose to go away? The explanation that I liked the best was the researcher that first discovered it, but she injected the THC directly into the cancer cell, and she's like, it was miraculous. It was like the cancer got the munchies and ate itself. And at that point, that was the only time that they documented that happening. Now that they're finding it with a variety of different plant and fungal-based compounds.
It was recently discovered they found probiotics in the Birch Polypore as well. So it's interesting that there would be that natural relationship already kind of established in it to some degree.
Yeah, everyone's got to feel it out. It's pretty situational, right? Got to take as much medicine as you need, and oftentimes it's more than you think you need. Like where it seems like where most people go wrong with even antibiotics is not taking enough. Yeah, I have no idea whether any of these things are safe for anybody. It's not like thousands and thousands upon thousands of years of human interaction and ingestion is enough to say that they're safe.
Nope, not
the guy did have the mushrooms on him when he died.
Yes. Maybe he called up the ice storm.
Yeah, he seemed like he was pretty chill. I don't know. Like,
oh, he was a real cool guy.
But the way that they found him, like there was no, he didn't die of any acute injuries or anything. It seemed like he just kind of cuddled up and went to sleep.
What you gonna do?
Yeah.
Well, we certainly don't recommend anyone do it. You may want to go out there and find yourself some Birch Polypore mushrooms and make a tea or nibble on a piece. Use it regularly for as long as you feel it's helpful, and then kind of see where it's at. And let us know. Let us know what your experience was with them. Or if you have some other personal experience or anecdotes that you'd like to share with us or our other viewers, by all means, write in, leave a comment, and things, we'll be sure to respond.
So the other indoles outside of the 5-methyltryptamine is there's tryptophan and 5-hydroxy-L-tryptophan, which is pretty friggin' close to serotonin. But serotonin's 4-hydroxytryptamine.
Okay, so it's got a bunch of precursors or analogs or...
Yeah. Or
very even upgrades
active.
even. Yeah. Or synergistic components that could be potential upgrades. This is making me want to have more of this even more regularly. Superpowers locked inside.
Yeah, I was seeing lots of...
Superpowers locked inside these things, right?
Yeah.
I mean, what was the one article you were reading about?
One in 2011 where they were finding it to be really active against HIV.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Birch Polypore mushroom, potential cure and treatment of HIV/AIDS.
They haven't found every anaerobic bacteria and virus that they've tried it against. It's shown to be effective so far.
So it's lethal when it comes to its antiviral capacities.
Viruses aren't alive. It's a communication. So, I mean, humans often want to think of themselves as the domineering species, but we're more of mitigating relationships and building conversations with nature. I don't think we're going to get very far with trying to kill viruses or bacteria, because we're going to have to find balance. They're definitely far more intelligent than we are.
Well, they're part of an intelligent structure that is far greater than any of us, that's for sure. But it is in accordance with the Taoist way of looking at things. In essence, they say, like, the issue a lot of times with Western religion is that everyone's trying to kill the devil. right? They want to kill the devil, right? Get rid of the devil, get rid of all this. But really what we try to seek to do is bring harmony and restore balance, and that way we don't have to kill anyone. So yeah, there's definitely, that's a good point, for sure. And in how we mentally interact and energetically, intentionally interact with whatever is inside of us, right? We can look at it in a form of conflict, right? As this conflict that one side must win and dominate over the other, which is how we're all trained. I know I've been conditioned to believe and behave that way, just as a result of growing up in this culture and being competitive in certain ways, having that force instilled in me. And there's certainly a time and place for it. It's great in its essence. Competition can breed excellence.
Yeah.
Especially when the right spirit is involved and there isn't any harm that comes as a result of it. But when we're trying to dominate and win at all costs, right, i.e. these things inside of us that we don't want, that we must execute and destroy, that does bring a certain mindset and energy to the process, which may not be conducive to long-term healing.
Yeah, and relationship and understanding what the greater system has in store for us. To look at this small piece of time, this small piece of the situation where we're seeing our species affected by viruses, what is the larger dynamic at play? The exchange of DNA in between humans and other parts of the environment. That there's a lot of work that viruses do in relationship to our genetic structure. And the negative effects that humans feel from the viruses aren't the act of the virus, it's the act of how the human relates with the virus, how the immune system relates with the viruses. Like, viruses don't kill people. People's own ecosystems, their own disturbances in their ecosystems is what ends up being the cause.
Fascinating. So, just in other areas, for instance...
Yeah, there's another way that these mushrooms could potentially save the world. Paul's whole story about, I don't know what he has, 4 or 5 ways that mushrooms could save the world. Another way that they could potentially save the human species, potentially, it hasn't been looked at yet, but our sperm count is dropping at such an alarming rate. If it continues to fall at this rate, humans will be infertile in under 100 years, is what they're telling us. Whether this is true or not.
That's what we've heard. Not our sperm count, ladies and gentlemen, but in general, the overall population. Yeah, we're all good over here, but...
The ingestion of certain compounds that comes out of plastics, the biological response from the Earth ecosystem is making this creature that is taking this oil, this blood of her out of the planet, that she's making them infertile. But then we know that mushrooms heal this relationship with the blood of the earth, as it does it topically in eating oil, eating the hydrocarbons and breaking them down into their primary constituents, and then they're part of the natural loop again without causing the abnormalities in growth that they were causing prior, the disturbances and imbalances that they were causing. So I'm kind of excited to see what comes out of the exploration of the birch polypores and the other mushrooms in cleansing these phthalates out of the system, they're calling them.
How easy for it is it just to get, can we just get sperm count testers and we can just get the whole crew on the birch polypore mushrooms and see if we can get some data?
Get some microscopes. I'm not involved in this study. One knows through the Tao that it's going to have a large synergistic effect in lung viral conditions as well. There's been a lot of, I've heard personally, great experience of people using chaga in relationship to these lung viruses that are going around with amazing results. And it's very similar constituents in the chaga, grow off the same trees, the betulinic acid, among much other things. But breaking earth up into her parts is a very disgusting habit that we do.
Well, as long as we're doing it, though. I tell you that the chaga, you know, is good stuff. But
Yeah.
in certain ways, I think that chaga ain't got nothing on this Birch Polypore. The Birch Polypore is just dominating right now, Jim. It's come on the scene strong. No one was expecting it. It was a complete sleeper. Came out of nowhere. And now it's totally dominating and infecting and accelerating its way into our, not only our habitat, but into our minds. You know, as I've noticed, as I spoke about when we were out on our trek, the more that these mushrooms get into our systems and get into our bodies and get into our conversations and into our relationships, the more that I find they are infecting their ways into our psychology and into our psyche. Just check this out for yourself and notice if it's not true in your own direct experience. The people who are into mushrooms in your circle, they're on a whole different level. They're connected, they're interested, they're curious, and they're possibly being controlled by a force beyond their conception. As you said, these organisms are more intelligent than we are. So what if that's their real aim here, is to, as they do with the ants, the cordyceps mushrooms take over and make them zombies. What if they're working their way into our psychology and causing us to behave in ways that are more beneficial to, I don't know, their idea of what homeostasis and harmony looks like?
Yeah. We can definitely see effects of that for sure. In terms of larger topsoil, like a primary biological function of mushrooms would be to create more topsoil and therefore create a larger biodiversity. Out of a richer humus layer, there's more potential life activity on all levels. Animal, invertebrate, plant life. It all benefits out of the topsoil being vibrant.
Yes, yes, but beyond topsoil.
Yeah, sure.
People who are interested in mushrooms, they are weirdly cool in a way that cannot be denied.
Sure. Yep.
Jen talks about
The red
harvesting, you know.
You need a knife,
You got it. Yeah, nice find.
fresh growth. And that should be sustainable. Keep growing, right?
It'll grow
Yes.
right back.
It'll grow right back, yeah.
Yeah. At this point, there really shouldn't be much of a debate over the stoned ape theory. You know, and even calling it a theory is rather ridiculous, because we know that there's this one compound that exists only in the mushroom world. The only place it's been documented anywhere is on Earth. And we know that it speeds up reaction speed. We know that it makes athletes perform better. We know that it builds vitality. So to think that this did not have a tremendous effect on human brain size and the capacity for the human, or if it didn't have an effect on the brain size, the capacity of the human to use the brain.
What's the compound?
It's a 4-phosphorylated dimethyltryptamine, known as psilocybin or cisalin.
Okay. Cool. We'll have to do an episode about that sometime as well. Sounds interesting. It sounds fascinating.
It's possibly a vitamin, you know, a necessary small element of vitality that is, you know, could be considered an essential vitamin.
Well, we'll talk about this more for sure in an upcoming episode, but also keep in mind that while there has been several other authors and pundits who have spoken on the stoned ape theory en masse and greatly, right? And we can talk about the research and
we
their
probably
findings.
wouldn't have it if it wasn't for Terrence, you know. I mean,
However,
as
something
evolved
that
as it is.
we have uniquely brought to the table is our stoned coyote theory. And we'll get into more of that
How
on an
was
upcoming
the
episode.
dog made into the dog? Did it involve a Sasquatch?
I mean, they are part of the dog family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. Like a bear.
Oh.
Or a seal.
Oh.
All dogs.
Or
Now, yeah, easy pickings. Oh, big one. That was the prize one of the day. Look at that monster. Yeah. So you never know what you're going to find, and looks like I got a bonus here with some turkey tail. And the way you can tell these guys are this pattern right here. Obviously, it's a shelf mushroom, and this should be white, pure white, and kind of smooth underneath. No gills. So that's turkey tail, and we can make that into some tea. Very, very good. We'll do an episode on that another time, but I'm going to go ahead and harvest it while we're here.
late fall oyster.
Yeah, look at the
It's
underside.
all
They all
white.
have that pattern where it kind of goes into the...
Starting to get a little dry, but I think that's still nice and edible there. Yeah. These will clean up oil spills. I'm really wondering when science gets around to doing some studies on what it does to sucking the same sort of toxic compounds that come out of oil that are doing all kinds of really weird stuff to human health. What are the effects of eating mushrooms on the body's potential to regenerate itself and
Toxic cleanup
yeah,
from within.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing I'm certainly finding too is that these mushrooms have a consciousness. I think they're taking hold. There's still some. It's just the mycelial network. Yeah, but this I think is one of those. It's just like, yeah, that popped out. Yeah, pretty much. All right, so I guess that's a wrap for this season. Love you guys, man. Really appreciate you all for being with us and connecting in this way. Looking forward to building this relationship, deepening it, and taking it to the next level. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
This transmission is coming to you from deep in the jungles of central Maine.